What do you think is the greatest community event in gaming history? Maybe you think of an Easter egg in your favorite zombies map, a massive live event in Fortnite. But in 2018, Roblox hosted a full unique special event, an event so massive, so ambitious that it united an entire platform in one of the greatest community hunts ever seen. This is the story of the Roblox Ready Player One event and why it could be the greatest gaming hunt of all time. In March 2018, Roblox launched its most ambitious crossover event in history. Sponsored by the film Ready Player One, it wasn't just another in-game event, it was a full-scale treasure hunt that spanned multiple games, challenging the players with cryptic puzzles, clues, and an intensive competition. The goal? To complete the quest and unlock the Dominus Venari, an exclusive and unique Dominus awarded only to the first player to solve the hunt. The big twist of the event was that it did not provide the players with the games that they would need to play to get closer to the Dominus, instead giving riddles and clues on where they could be. The goal was to find 3 keys. Once all the keys were unlocked, the player would unlock the ability to compete in a complex puzzle to get the Dominus. Because of the millions of games on the platform, the players would have to scavenge around looking for clues, with hints being given only on a gradual basis. Because of the complex puzzles the players had to solve, and the lack of hints being given, the event went on to last over 3 weeks, with players gradually finding new pieces of the puzzle. The very first piece of the puzzle that players had to find was the copper key. On the main homepage of the event was where clues would be given and the puzzle pieces would be given. On March 12th the game began, and it took 4 clues and 2 days. On March 14th, the copper key was found after 10 hours of searching by a streamer named Jace. Getting the copper key was such a hassle. Clue 1 and clue 2 is very obvious that it's jailbreak, especially when they say like by day or by night there's conflict in this open world game. There wasn't much open world games that were big on Roblox at the time, so people basically just instantly knew that this was jailbreak. The next 2 clues given basically just give away the whole puzzle and makes it really obvious kind of what they need to do. Now let's go through the puzzle because it's very interesting, the steps that the players had to go through to get this key and the others. So in Roblox Jailbreak, on a public server, players would have to go to this key that's drawn into the grass by a fallen meteorite. The key points at a wall inside of this town, and players would have to drive straight into the wall, triggering a cutscene in relation to the story, which would begin the mission. The players, after triggering this, would, between the hours of 10 p.m. and 3 a.m. in-game time, would have to rob the train, the jewelry store, and the bank, all at night, and each would unlock a token fragment, which would ultimately rebuild this token. Now, doing this was extremely difficult because you have the cops trying to arrest you in the game, and these cops would camp by these stores just to stop people from getting the key, and it was such a hassle. I mean, robbing all 3, and each minute is a second in real time, so that means that the players had 5 minutes to rob all 3 of the major places to rob in the game. So this was almost impossible to do and extremely difficult and would take tons of time to do. But that's what players would have to do to get this token. The players would then need to answer these questions that the cops give, and these questions were just ones that the answers were these complex numbers that players would just have to figure out, and eventually once the answers were out, it was pretty easy. You just got to search up the answers, but the riddles are pretty interesting. After answering these questions, the player would be given a key. With this key, they could do the next step. The next step 100% relied on chance. I'm guessing it was extremely low, like a 1 to 10% chance that this could happen. The thing that the players would need to do is they would need to rob the 3rd cart of the train, the red cart. Inside of the cart, there's always a vault, and players would just have to hope that inside the vault is this lockbox. Players would spend hours and hours and hours trying to rob this train over and over again, while other players are doing it as well, which made it even more difficult. There were cops also trying to arrest them. They had to do this as a prisoner, by the way, all of this stuff. And it would just have a very low chance of spawning. People would do it in minutes and get the lockbox, but people would play for hours and just never get it. The train would also fling people off of it, which is just very frustrating. But when players would unlock this lockbox, inside there's a game cartridge. This game cartridge can be taken back to the camping cops. The players would then have to play this game to the score of 100. The cops would then say the gate has been cleared and the players would unlock the copper key. Now, getting the copper key when it first came out and the event started was just, it was almost impossible for just the average player to get. You'd have to play for hours and hours or just be extremely lucky to get it. So 2 days later, on March 16th, a big patch came out. The first change was that the key could now be gotten on a private server, meaning that all the other players trying to attack you and all of the bugs caused by the train, all of that would no longer be a problem. It would be much easier, but you just have to pay the cost to unlock a private server for the game, which was a couple bucks in real life. The robbery would also not have to happen at nighttime anymore, between the hours of 10 and 3. You could do it anytime. And also, the players now would have to only rob at one of the 3 places rather than all 3, making it plenty easier. You could just rob it any time of the day. The questions that the camping cops give would also have the answer right there on the screen, and the lockbox on the train became 100% guaranteed. So all of those difficult parts are just completely out. For the camping cops puzzle, I don't think they had to give players the answers, and I still think it would have been fun if the lockbox was just not 100% guaranteed. Maybe they could lower it to like 80%, maybe even 90%. Would be fine, but I think 100%, that's a little too much. I feel like that kind of ruins the fun of just the chance of it. And especially with the robbing places being only one building, then you're just guaranteed to get the coin by playing the game. So what's the point of that step? Although I guess you'd have to trigger the cutscene first. But yeah, it all became too easy. It went from extremely hard to too easy. That's why I think it's very fair that the players that completed the quest before March 15th, when the patches came out, got a special copper crown of silver, and the ones that played it after March 15th got the copper crown of bronze. The first player to unlock it, Jace, won the copper crown of gold. The copper key puzzle was met with a lot of negative reception. There were a lot of complaints about people trying to block others from getting the key. People would purposely camp in spots where people would need to get the key. But the main gripes of this were definitely about the train. So the train would just fling people off. Sometimes the text box wouldn't even work when players went into the train. And the RNG was just insane with the train. Another thing that players were criticizing was that when there was a lot of players on the train, random players would just get flung off the train, making it extremely laggy and just a big mess, especially when it's extremely rare to get the train. I could only imagine how people might have felt if they got the lockbox and just were flung off the train. So it's good that they patched all that and made it a bit easier. Overall, it's still pretty cool that all these things came together to make for a very cool Easter egg inside of Roblox Jailbreak, and that's only one piece of the puzzle of the Roblox Ready Player One event, because there were 2 more keys that the players would need to get. The Jade Key was found with no clues on March 17th, 5 days, 5 hours, and 12 minutes after the event launched. The key would be found on a game called Phantom Forces. In Phantom Forces, you'd need to get on the highway or the crane map and find a green vending machine. On the vending machine, there was a grid with white lights. The players would have to deactivate all of the lights on the grid. Each shot would deactivate or activate the blocks around it, making for a pretty difficult puzzle. Eventually, the community, however, found a website that solved this puzzle pretty easily. They found a strategy where if you shot the lights going from top to bottom underneath the light that's lit up, then you'd eventually work your way all the way to the bottom. The vending machine puzzle, once completed, would give the player a green key melee weapon, which I just checked my Roblox account. I still have it, and I also have the rest of the keys, which is pretty cool. So the player could use this key on the suburban map. They would need to go to the middle house, and inside this house upstairs, they would find a keyhole. If they hit the keyhole with this melee weapon, it would teleport the player to a new game. This game was basically just Call of Duty Zombies. Zombies were running at the player in this pretty big map. They had unlimited ammo, and they would have to survive until round 7. Once they beat round 7, they would be instantly given the Jade Key. So this one was a lot easier than the Jailbreak one, a lot less chance, a lot harder to mess up. There wasn't a time restraint like there was with the Jailbreak one. And by March 22nd, there was a whole lot of patches that made it even easier. The first would be that the vending machine would be on every single map rather than just the 2. VIP servers were then allowed, so you didn't have to do this on a public server where people are trying to shoot at you. Zombies were a lot slower, and they had a lot less health, and there were also a lot less zombies as well, making that zombie part a lot easier. The keyhole could also be found on the Dunes map inside the hotel. I think it was pretty good the way it was originally. I mean, nothing was really given up to chance. I feel like the zombies part could have stayed the same and it would have been just as fun. I definitely think the jailbreak one with the copper key definitely needed an update, but this one I don't think so. I think it was good the way it was. I guess that making it easier after a few days opened it up to more players that didn't want the more challenging aspect of this event. So it's fine in that aspect, but I do feel like it was just made a little too easy overall after a few days. The Jade Key also had 2 separate prizes, a silver version for players that got it before March 20th, and a bronze version for players that got it after March 20th when the patches came out. The first player to unlock it, Maple Stick, won the Jade Crown of Gold. The main complaints for the Phantom Force's Jade Key was mainly to do with the 2 people that won it. So Maple Stick and Nolan, they were accused of exploiting because they got it before any clues were revealed, which to me, it is suspicious with Maple Stick because he has worked on a ton of Roblox games before. He was accused of getting pointers by the developers of these games, and it overall just didn't look clean with the community that someone that worked on these games were one of the first ones that unlocked the key. Nolan was the second winner. There really is no proof that he didn't find it, honestly. I mean, Roblox stated that the clues don't necessarily have to be seen to find these keys. So he could have definitely just came upon it. The clues are just kind of used to guide the way of the community if they're really struggling, or if someone just wants to solve it themselves. The clues get more visible on what needs to be done to unlock the key. In terms of the actual puzzle itself, the most frustrating thing was definitely the fact that it was in Phantom Forces, a PvP game, and there was no way to just get into a private server unless you want to pay at first. So this would mean that there were 2 opposing teams fighting each other all while you're trying to solve this puzzle on this machine. This means that players on the other team could kill you, and there's just people trying to get the machine, ruining the game a bit, and people would come out and wipe the whole other team that was by the machine. It was just a big mess with that, but to me, that's just part of the challenge of it. It kind of adds a more thrilling aspect to it. The next piece of the puzzle was found on March 20th, 8 days after the event began, and 3 days after the Jade Key was found. The Crystal Key was found with 3 clues, and 8 were eventually given. These 3 definitely only had to do with the first part of this puzzle, so it's pretty cool that the community found it when they did, because the Crystal Key definitely takes the longest to get out of the 3 keys, and it's amazing that the community found this with only 3 hints. The first thing players would need to do is go into a game called Hexaria. It's kind of died down now, but this was a pretty big game back in 2018. The player would first need to complete the entire tutorial, and then after that, find this house and talk to a guy named Bernard. Bernard speaks in Latin, and translating the phrase he says, Lux Loquitur, it translates to light speaks. The player would then need to go through this portal, go into the Sky City, do some parkour, then jump on this specific platform and type light speaks. This then teleports the player to this big white space. In this space, the player can talk to a mysterious figure who speaks in riddles. These riddles, you don't have to answer anything, they're kind of just there, but afterwards the player can just jump off the platform and go back into the regular land. The player then has to find this lantern on this specific tree. At night, the lantern blinks in Morse code. So this Morse code, it's really cool that they put this in here. The long light would be a dash, and the short light will just be a period, and the players would have to decipher what the light says and bring it back to Bernard. The light would give a 4-letter code, and when the 4 letters are given to Bernard, he gives the player a fortune cookie. Inside this fortune cookie is a famous quote from the film Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around every once in a while, you can miss it. Underneath this quote is a group of lucky numbers. By opening the map in the game and typing the lucky numbers into the chat box, the player would unlock a new location called Shermer. Clicking on the location, it'll teleport the player to the house from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Going inside the house and going up to the bedroom, the players can jump onto the bed and type in chat the famous quote from the film, making this a recreation of the iconic ending to Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which is a cool thing that they put in here, because Ready Player One takes a lot of inspiration from these old movies. It does have places from old movies like The Shining, so this fits in perfectly with the event, and it's such a cool little detail that they put in here. After typing this into the chat, the player can then go click on this light in the shower and get a card. This card can be brought to a necromancer in the graveyard in the main area of Hexaria. The necromancer in return gives the player a key. The key can be brought to this church, and in the church an NPC named Ted asks the player, "What is my last name?" to which the player has to answer, "Longbottom," like Neville from Harry Potter. After this, a giant secret entrance opens inside the church. When jumping into the portal, they enter into a boss fight, where the players have to have a dance battle with John Travolta in a Guitar Hero type game. In order to beat John Travolta, the player had to get a nearly perfect score. If the player gets a higher score than John Travolta, then they finally unlock the crystal key. So yeah, this one's pretty crazy. There's so many steps, but on March 24th, there's a patch that comes out that cuts a piece of it and makes it a whole lot easier. So first of all, the entire Sky City section and that part with the mysterious man and the riddle is just completely cut out. Now, right after talking to Bernard, you could go straight to the light and get the code. But the code also changed as well. Now at the light, there's an NPC, and the NPC tells the player that the code is C key, which is just the permanent code in every single lobby, while before the code was completely random in each server. So now the player just has to tell Bernard C key. Once the player gets the fortune cookie, the map then tells the player exactly what to do and exactly what to type. And the boss fight with John Travolta is also a lot less difficult. While before the AI difficulty was extremely high in the 90s, it went down quite a bit. So rather than having to get a perfect score, the players now just needed a nearly perfect score. By obtaining the key before March 24th, before these patches, the player would get the Crystal Crown of Silver, while getting the reward afterwards would only give them the Crystal Crown of Bronze. The main winner of the challenge was Sandfall 123, and they got the Crystal Crown of Gold. The Crystal Key puzzle was definitely the one that got the least negative reception from the community. People loved that it was Hexaria, a game that was only upcoming at the time, while the other two were much bigger games, and the overall puzzle of it didn't rely on any PvP, while the other two keys were surrounded by PvP. The main complaints came from players that were just complaining about the difficulty of it, the difficulty of the boss fight at the end, and if they lost the boss fight, they would have to run all the way back down this long hallway again. But to me, that's just, I like the difficulty of it. It makes it harder to get and more rewarding to earn, and eventually that was made easier for the people that didn't want as much of a challenge. So to me, I think this one's perfect and fits in perfectly with the rest of the puzzles. Up next is definitely a really difficult one that's time consuming, long, and definitely the most difficult one. After the crystal key was found, the search for the Dominus went cold. For 9 days, the community discovered nothing for the next piece of the puzzle. Eventually, the clues hinted at the 2018 egg hunt hiding the next piece of the puzzle, and that came to be true, because 9 days after the crystal key was discovered, the players found a gate with a Dominus on top. To find the door, players would need to go into the egg hunt map. Inside the egg hunt map, there are different worlds, and inside these worlds are more worlds that you could go to. So this is a giant game with big worlds, so there's so many places to look. To find this door, you had to go to the Wonderland Grove map, climb to the top of this giant tree, and find this passageway to another map called Merlin Swamp. In the corner of the swamp, there's two birds. These two birds point the way to this cave. Inside the cave is this giant door with the shape of a Dominus on top, so players knew that the Dominus had to be in here. Around the door there are 8 square holes, some with different numbers inside. Players would need to find 8 fragments to open the door. And after a day, on March 30th, 4 pieces were found. The first of the 4 cubes were found in the canal map. Players would have to go into the canal map, find a telephone booth, and inside the telephone booth there had to be a dial with a 0 key. There was a chance that there wouldn't be though, so players would have to leave and come back in and hope that it's there. The players would then have to type the code 2586. After typing this code, they could run to this giant wheel, climb it, and get the first cube. After this, they'd have to head to the city map, go to the subway, Go through the subway, go up to this warehouse, leave the warehouse, and go find this arcade called the Egg Society. At this arcade, they could use their abilities to climb the roof and jump through this window. Inside this window is the next cube. After this, the players would have to go to the underground map, climb a ladder, go down a zipline, and make their way all the way across the map to the specific spot, climb this leaf, and get the third cube. After this, they would have to go to the Wonderland map, where they could go through this maze and find this giant room with these different cards. What the players had to do is add up all the numbers on the red cards. With this number, they would have to use a decimal to binary converter to turn the number into a binary number. Once given the binary number of ones and zeros, they would have to go to this caret section of the map and use the binary code to know what carets need to be put up or put down in the ground. The zeros were the ones that need to be in the ground, and then the ones were the ones that need to be up. Once this was done, they would need to go to this giant caret in a nearby cave to get the fourth cube. After this, a day went by, and on March 31st, they found the fifth and the sixth cube. To find the fifth cube, the player would have to go to the ruins of Wukong Jungle map and go across this bridge. Across the bridge, there's this totem. By jumping on top of the totem, it triggers an audio cue, which you could hear very clearly if you put your volume all the way up in the game. After hearing that audio cue, they would have to go up the staircase of the temple to this gray step. Stand on the gray step for a second and another audio cue goes off. After this, they need to climb this roof, stand on the edge of the roof and wait for another audio cue, then stand in front of this NPC girl on the edge of this grass and wait for another audio cue. Then they would need to stand on the edge of another nearby grass and hear the final audio cue. After this, on top of the totem is the fifth cube. Next, they had to head to Hardboiled City. In Hardboiled City, they had to climb in between these two particular buildings all the way to the roof. On the roof, there's a way they could teleport to another map called Festival of Eggs. In this map, the player would have to find a plane, fly through the diving board, fly through the middle of the castle, through the egg basket coaster, and through the egg blimp gazebo. After doing all this, they could find on top of the merry-go-round the sixth cube to be collected. 2 days later, on April 2nd, the final two pieces were found. The seventh one could be found in the Wonderland Grove map. To get this, they would have to go to the corner of a map, eat this cupcake, which turns the player small. The small player would have to run through this tiny door into this tiny town, dance on top of a particular blue house, and then go back out, go to the waterfall inside the map, go through the waterfall, behind the waterfall into a cave, and collect the seventh cube. The player would then need to go to the canal map, find the ice cream shop, get in the boat by the ice cream shop, and drive under every single bridge in the game. But the twist was that they had to drive through every single one only once. If they went through it again, they would have to redo the whole thing. So they had to go through in this particular order. People made maps of how to do it in this order without going through them again. Once they go under all these tunnels, the eighth and final cube spawns in on top of this flag and on top of this building in the middle of the map. Once all these cubes were collected, back at the gate, you had to put these cubes in a specific order to open the door. And inside the door, inside the chest, was a stained glass egg. Players knew that this egg wasn't just a part of the Easter egg hunt map, but part of the Ready Player One event, because this egg wasn't listed inside this in-game booklet that showed all the eggs. People received this part of the challenge quite well. The main complaint was just that 7th and 8th cube being just extremely hard to find. And I can see why it was hard to find, but I think that's what all this event's all about, is just very, very particular things that you need to do to unlock these different pieces of the puzzle. So up next, the players, the only thing they had left to find was the golden Dominus. And the first one to find it was only a day away on April 3rd, 3 weeks after the event began. On April 3rd, a player found the grand prize of the competition, the Dominus Venari. Before I talk about the winner and the aftermath of this event, I will go over exactly how this was found. In order to get to the final part of this whole event, what you had to do is go back to Hardboiled City in the 2018 egg hunt, find this coffee shop, and zoom into the help wanted sign, then spell out the word Gunther. After spelling this out, you get a cool cutscene and are teleported to the final obby of the Ready Player One Roblox event. And this obby was so difficult. I remember I got all the way up to here. I couldn't complete this obby. You gotta dodge lasers, do this parkour over lava. Now, I was a little kid at the time. I feel like I could probably do it now. But back then, this was so difficult. Then after the obby, you have to answer these 12 questions given by the main quote-unquote villain of the event, which there's a whole story. It's in relation to the movie. And these questions basically revolve around Roblox. And once you answer these, you're then teleported to this factory. You go through this glass elevator inspired by Willy Wonka, of course. And it kind of just, it shows you nostalgic history of Roblox. It takes you through these old buildings, some stages from these Roblox awards shows, and it's a really cool celebration of Roblox's history. This event is just perfect for that. And at the end, you go up to this desk, and the writer of Ready Player One is there with the creator of Roblox, or their NPCs, of course. And if you're the first person to do this, you get the Dominus. But if you're not, you get a different prize. You get the golden wings of the Pathfinder, which I got everything but, because the parkour was just so hard. But yeah, so that's how you got the Dominus Venari. This entire puzzle led up to that. You couldn't do any step without completing the other. So the first person to get it had to complete everything and be the first person to discover this final piece. And they discovered it 3 weeks after the event started. This entire event was playable from the start. So that means that if you knew how to beat it on day one, you could have beat it on day one. But no one did. It took a whole 3 weeks to complete, and the whole time the community was working for it. I remember being around during this. YouTubers were releasing videos on it, and it was a huge creative event. And the obstacle of it, of solving these puzzles, was so good, and it took so much time to complete it. And the puzzles that they put in here were actually so in-depth and so cool. Although I don't like when it's up to chance, like with the train thing. That would be my main critique, but overall people loved how it was. On April 5th, a few days after the first player completed the course and completed the whole quest, the whole course was made a lot easier because of how hard it was, and it was still pretty hard even after the patch, because that's when I played it. But this only led to more controversy. After weeks of relentless searching, puzzle solving, and some fierce competition, one player finally reached the finish line. One player finally got the Dominus. On April 3rd, 2018, a Roblox user named Roku became the first ever to complete the final challenge and claim the legendary Dominus Venari. But his victory wasn't without controversy. As soon as the announcement was made, the community exploded with reactions. Some people celebrated, some people were shocked, and then there was a whole lot of skeptics. Almost immediately as it happened, there were just tons and tons of accusations of exploiting, unfair advantages. People claim that hackers were using scripts and exploits to bypass challenges, making the competition totally unfair. Some people said that the final obstacle course was so hard that before the patch, it was almost unbeatable without exploiting. Now to me, a lot of these sound like just accusations and just people complaining because it was too difficult. But that's kind of the point. Because of the speculation that Roku was exploiting, there was so much hate behind him. He got death threats, he got a lot of his personal information leaked, and people just went crazy trying to get this guy. So it's really crazy and kind of sad. Despite the controversy, however, the Ready Player One event became one of the most legendary moments in Roblox history, maybe even gaming history in my opinion. The massive scale of it, the community collaboration, the prize, it just all came together for such an awesome community event. I mean, most events would just stay within one game or just one round, like a Fortnite live event. It'll be a big community event that happens one time and the whole community's there for it. But this spanned across multiple games, all under Roblox's name, and required players to work together to solve something, to solve riddles, and just complete these different challenges all across these different genres. And it's kind of like a giant Call of Duty Zombies Easter egg, except not in one map and not such a niche community, an entire community of just people that play Roblox, not just for one single map for like a day or so. This lasted multiple weeks and the whole community was working together, and it was such a niche thing. No one knew what game it would be in, and there's millions and millions of games on Roblox, so it could have been in anything, these different puzzle pieces. So that just made the event so exciting, is figuring out where all this will be at. And the players, the YouTubers, and all the forums that were coming out that worked together to decipher all these clues. It just became, in my opinion, just the greatest community event in gaming history. And the prize of it, only having one winner out of the hundreds of thousands of people that played this event, and the millions that play Roblox, the fact that only one person won, just the excitement of potentially getting that prize made it totally worth it. No other gaming event has been this in-depth and community-oriented that I've ever seen. The only similar thing is Call of Duty Zombies Easter eggs, but the fact that this is a site-wide gaming event is why I think it really is one of the greatest gaming events of all time, and I don't know why it's never been replicated. Anyways guys, I thank you so much for watching this video. This was definitely one of the most fun ones I've ever made. I'm going to try and make more videos like this, and I post gaming news and just try to keep up with the news of what's going on. I want to make more video essays, so yeah, if you liked it, leave a like and let me know if you were around for this event and if you enjoyed it and how far you got, what you unlocked. If you got the wings like I did, let me know. Alright, have a good day.